Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Okay, we're back up and running. You won't believe what happened, folks.
Yeah.
We'll be honest about it. Ryan kicked the cable.
Yeah.
And off we went. Today, things happen. Today, all of our guests, including Jeff Patterson, standing by, are brought to you by the Alberni Power and Marine RPM Group. Welcome to them. Located in Port Alberni, Alberni Power and Marine is one of Vancouver Island's most trusted boat dealerships, the largest Mercury Marine dealership in Canada. Their service team just won in the fourth consecutive year the CSI, Customer Satisfaction Index. This is a big deal. Pay attention, Rick.
Oh, yeah.
The CSI score was again above the national average. Make your appointment today for the 2022 boating season at albernipowermarine.com. Where were we in our conversation when our audio was kicked out?
We were talking about the Canucks.
I'm not a great team. I just threw Ryan right under the bus.
It's okay. You don't think he rips us before the show and during commercial breaks? 24/7.
Canucks lose to the Oilers in overtime 3-2. Another fabulous performance by Spencer Martin. Also today, Patrik Allvin introduced as the 12th general manager in club history. A lot to talk about, and here to talk about it from Sekeres and Price and Rinkwide, it's Jeff Patterson. Jeff, thanks for doing this. How are you?
I'm great, Donnie. And Rick, the audio kicked out there. It sounded like you said Jaro Halak was going to get traded. Is that?
No, I don't see it happening. But hey, things change. Who knows? Day to day.
Okay, let's focus, Jeff, at the start on the ice. What's your read on Spencer Martin after 2 games and what it might mean for the Canucks goaltending situation?
No, it's an incredible story, Donnie. And we love storylines in this business. And I thought he was sensational on Friday, and part of the story was the disappointment of not being available for Sunday night. And I kind of thought with his goaltending that we saw from him on Friday against Florida that he had earned himself another start somewhere along the line down the road here this season. And I was hoping that the organization was going to make that happen for him. Little did I know that he would test out the protocol and be available to go again last night. And what an opportunity for him to face McDavid and Draisaitl and see an awful lot of them as that night unfolded. Yeah, the Ryan McLeod goal is it's an ugly one, and he's got to stop that. And that was the Oilers. They were looking for that sliver of light, and they found it. And from there, they were able to kick the door open. But overall, 2 games now, the guy's given up a pair of 5-on-5 goals, and that's it. A power play goal against the Panthers, the 3-on-3 goal in overtime last night. But he has absolutely provided them the kind of goaltending that allowed them to at least get single points. And if this team could score, maybe they would have got something more than just the solo point in the standings, because as good as Martin has been here, without Horvat, without Garland, it was always going to be an uphill battle. No JT Miller the other night as well. But this team cannot score goals. 2 last night and 1 in each of its last 2 starts. So there's 2 ends of the ice, but the Spencer Martin story, I do think does change the conversation. And Rick might want to cover his ears here, but if you're Jim Rutherford, you didn't sign Jaro Halak to this contract. You have no obligations beyond this season. Rutherford is going to be here. Jaro Halak won't, and every dollar matters in the salary cap era. Like, if the Canucks wanted to be truly ruthless, they could say, hey, we found a backup here. The backup's only going to get 6 or 8 starts. There's 40 games to go. Mm-hmm. So there's no telling that Jaro Halak gets another start for the Vancouver Canucks. And if you don't want him to get to 10 games and the bonus to kick in, you tell him, like, sorry, man, this is business. You're going to get paid out to what you're owed this year, but we're going to find a way to work around this so that that bonus overage doesn't carry over. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to go, but in a cutthroat world like this, again, Rutherford has no ties to that contract, and I could see a world in which that scenario plays itself out, because I think Spencer Martin has shown that he could be a capable backup for 6 or 8 more games the rest of the way here.
Obviously, the no movement clause will get in the way, but we've seen those things waived in the past. Hey, Elias Pettersson,
you carry 3 goaltenders. You just keep him on the roster. He just doesn't play.
Yeah. Jeff, where has Elias Pettersson's shot been all season?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, he scored in 3 of the last 5 games. I do think that he has turned a corner here, and loved to see that last night. I loved the back check too, when he was able to turn that puck over and then freewheel. 4-on-4, there was a little bit extra room for him there, and using the defenseman Cody Ceci as a screen. So again, you just hope that these types of things continue to fuel Elias Pettersson, because I do think that beyond just playing better, there is now this tangible takeaway of putting pucks in the net and leaving an imprint on the score sheet. But let's not fool ourselves here. A highly disappointing first half of the season. He has to know it. And so you just hope that he's now moving in the right direction, and that the second half is going to look a lot more like these last 5 games than the 35 that preceded them.
A couple of guys, Donnie and I talked about, Jeff, ice time last night. Hoglander, 2 minutes plus in the first period. Podkolzin ended up with 7 minutes. What's happening with these two guys, and why is their ice time so low?
Well, Podkolzin, a little bit of bad luck. He was on a line with a couple of fringe guys, let's be honest, in Dowling and Bailey, and Bruce Boudreau just essentially went down to a 3-line game, and they were the line that was trapped out or caught out in terms of not getting ice time the way that they would have liked, because Podkolzin had 2 shifts after the middle of the hockey game. He played twice in the third period, but was parked for most of the second half of the second as well. So unfortunate for him. As for Hoglander, he was one of the 9 forwards that was playing a fair bit, and that line with Dickinson and Chason, you maybe don't expect that line to produce a ton, but Chason had a whole bunch of opportunities last night. You would like to have seen him finish 1 or 2, and maybe it would have been a different outcome for the Canucks. But as much as Bruce Boudreau has provided a boost and a bump here, and the results are there, I do have to quarrel with his deployment in overtime. And I know that he's fallen in love with Lammikko and Highmore, but when Lammikko and Elias Pettersson essentially play the same amount of time in overtime, you're not trying to defend. You have to be defensively aware, but you're trying to win the hockey game, and you want to put your offensive guys in the best position to win the game. McDavid played 3 minutes and 10 seconds of overtime, and Draisaitl was over 2.5. So they were both out there for more than half of the overtime period, and ultimately, look what happened there. You had to get another shift for Pettersson. You had to find a way to get Besser some ice time. And look, say what you will about defensive deficiencies for a guy like Nils Hoglander. He can generate offense, and with all that time and space out there, 3-on-3, I think Bruce Boudreau missed the mark there with Lammikko and Highmore, and ultimately Jason Dickinson on the back check on McDavid on the game-winning goal. Mott was going last night. Mott's got the speed. I had no issue with that. But we saw the other night that Lammikko and Highmore got caught out for 3 minutes in overtime against the Florida Panthers. They're not overtime guys. You're trying to win the game. You're not trying to defend it to get it to a shootout. And so I think the coach missed the mark there. Hasn't done it often this year, but I will quarrel with his decision and deployment in overtime last night.
So Jim Rutherford, Patrik Allvin, Derek Clancy, Rachel Dory, Emily Castonguay, do you feel, is the feeling that the management group now, you feel more confident with this group?
I think it's been an impressive week for the Canucks. Emily Castonguay, really impressive in her introductory Zoom. And I'm just blown away by people that can go back and forth from French to English like that. Ricky, I have enough trouble with one language, and then to hear somebody that's just able so seamlessly to transition. And I loved her passion and her drive, and her backstory is incredible. And so I think they've landed a really, really sharp person there to handle the contracts and the CBA and all those things. I mean, she is an expert in that regard, so that's a nice hire. And Patrik Allvin earlier today understated very much as advertised. And I'll admit, and it seemed that I wasn't alone, there aren't a lot of people that know a whole lot about Patrik Allvin, but the reputation is a guy that just puts his head down, gets the work done, whether it was as a scout or as he worked his way through the executive ranks in Pittsburgh. And, he sounded like a guy that clearly had a vision for some of the things that he wants to implement here, the way that he wants to conduct business. He mentioned European and college free agents repeatedly throughout his availability, and I think that's a little bit of a tell of where he thinks maybe some value can be found for the Vancouver Canucks, and something the Pittsburgh Penguins had some success with as well. And so, I like the way that the front office is structured now. Jim Rutherford, to me, deserves credit. He said in day one that he wanted to build out this diverse front office, and he's done that. Different backgrounds, people that haven't had these opportunities yet. And ultimately, they all just sort of feel like very sharp and capable people that have been in this game in other roles. So let's see what it all means. Rutherford said this morning, some really difficult decisions to make now between now and the trade deadline. And also talked about not being in a great spot if you're not in the playoff picture and you're a capped out team. So that sounds like a guy that is going to take a long, hard look at trying to move some money off the books here to free up opportunities and just give them some flexibility on the cap for the years to come.
We're going to hear from, first time on this show, from Patrik Allvin in his introductory press conference. We're going to hear a clip from that. How do you think he came across, Jeff?
Yeah, really, really well. Again, a guy that hasn't been in a public-facing role an awful lot, a lot of behind-the-scenes work, but I thought he handled it beautifully. And again, he sounded like a guy that has some real sort of core values of what he wants to accomplish here. And he said he was really impressed. He sat down with Daniel and Henrik for lunch here during part of his interview and didn't really have any association with them, but certainly was aware of them and their body of work over the last couple of decades in the National Hockey League, but wants to incorporate them. He mentioned Ryan Johnson a number of times, also talked about the importance of doing a better job as an organization of building the pipeline through the farm system. They did a nice job of that in Wilkes-Barre and were able to develop players that contributed to some of those Stanley Cup teams in Pittsburgh. And so I do think that that's an area that he recognizes already. Needs to be beefed up a little bit and something that they're going to focus on. So, yeah, all things considered, really my first chance to interact with him. And much like Emily Castengay the other day, knew the name from being in the business, but was impressed with both of them, the way they conducted their business here in introductory Zooms.
Jeff, nice to hear from you. And given our first segment, the emphasis on here. Thanks for this, Jeff. Talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Thanks.